because we're in California and we've made a decision we're not leaving, and we are, conservative, we're strong supporters of the Second Amendment. So we're very fortunate indeed to have Jason. Jason is the legislative chair for the California Rifle and Pistol Association. So we're very welcome, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. And now, Jason, on the line, we have calling in, and that was funny. I asked, now, are they the competition, the gun owners of California?
Absolutely not. No, they are our friends in the trenches fighting back against unconstitutional legislation up in Sacramento, and we definitely appreciate them and their efforts for sure.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and let me bring on Sam, and we can have join us all in the conversation. And welcome, Sam. You're on the air with David Hernandez, Mary Ann Burnell, and Jason. And I understand you guys are not competition. You share the same values. So welcome.
Very much so. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you, David. And, speaking with a radio show down from my old hometown, my old stompings down in El Sereno, where I grew up. And now I'm up here in Sacramento fighting for the Second Amendment. I've been doing it for 45 years. Well,
that's great. And, because it's so important. I mean, here we are, in, seemingly deep blue California, yet we know that, I forget, the percentage of gun owners in California is pretty high. And those just aren't, right-wing conservative Republicans. Those are across the board Californians, right?
Absolutely. If you just look at the numbers, the raw numbers, the actual number of guns that exist in private possession throughout America is close to 500 million. And California is 10 to 20% of everything that the country is. So let's just imagine down at the 10% level. That means there are 50 million guns in private possession in the state of California. And thank God the government doesn't know who has them and what they have for many of them, and they were still completely legal. So I'm pretty good with that.
That's nice. Well, as liberal as some people think about California, that many times, I mean, if the legislature with a supermajority with the Assembly and the Senate and with the governor, if they had their ways, they would probably reduce that number by quite a few.
I'll tell you, they're definitely trying to reduce that number just for new people to even get into firearms in the first place, especially with what we see here with a lot of bills this session banning certain types of firearms that are in common use. More particularly, I'm referring to Assembly Bill 1127, which is basically a soft ban or just a hard ban at that point on Glocks and all Glock-style handguns.
What? I just bought 3. Come on. They want to ban that?
No, according to the state of California, those are really dangerous handguns now because you can easily convert them into a machine gun.
Well, if I wanted a machine gun, why wouldn't I buy a machine gun? Why would I turn my little...
Well, don't worry. Thankfully for you, California already doesn't allow NFA items. So,
wow.
They're already ahead of the curve on that.
Sam, some people think you could just go to a gun show and you can buy whatever you want, whether it's whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's because they are naive and they have bought into the lies of the... drive-by media and the anti-gun community who try to paint gun shows as a place where you can go as like a bazaar, and the guy pulls back the curtain and invites you back here. Come and take this room, and there are machine guns back there and belt-fed this.
You got Stinger missiles and anti-tank guns. It's kind of like that one scene in Black Hawk Down where you had all the ammunition and AK-47s all over the place. Right. That's kind of how they kind of pictured the gun show that used to be at the Pomona Fairgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And David, the key point here, though, is that it is already illegal to possess the parts to make a gun a machine gun, and it's illegal unless you are registered with the BATF under the NFA 1934, the National Firearms Act of 1934. It's illegal to possess one. So criminals somehow aren't paying attention to the laws, and they either manufacture or somehow steal or buy or acquire illicitly a machine gun on very rare occasions. But the fact of the matter is all of the laws that they're proposing in Sacramento only affect you and me, the law-abiding citizens, because criminals already aren't abiding by the law, and the passage of this bill isn't going to make them to abide by the law. So it's ridiculous.
I'm curious. Now, is it different if you have a gun show in L.A. compared to, like, if you were to go to Nevada and go to a gun show? Are they, the requirements different?
There are slight differences in that. In California, we have very regulated gun shows. Mm-hmm. You can't have them on state-owned property, so you can't have them at fairgrounds that are owned by the state, but at other locations you can. Mm-hmm. The gun shows here are very regulated. As a matter of fact, actually, a crime has not been committed at a gun show in the state of California for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. It hasn't happened. Now, in Nevada, because they have different laws, you can actually go in and do an instant background check. You go into a gun store, you go to a gun show, and they have dealers there. And they do an instant background check right there, check with the FBI's NICS system, and if you're good to go, you walk out of there with a gun and all the ammunition you want. Wow. So, but as far as machine guns and all of these other things, the laws are the same across the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sam and Jason, there are a lot of people there. They look at what a firearm, the appearance of the firearm, not how it actually operates, but it appears to be a weapon of war. And they're introducing these laws based on the gun's appearance, and in reality they don't know anything about it. So they do such little research.
Yeah, especially when it comes to when you look at California's assault weapons ban, particularly, they believe, and I say they, the people who put these laws in the first place, they believe that just the mere presence of things like a pistol grip or a telescoping stock or a forward vertical grip, those inherently make the gun more dangerous, or they're an assault weapon. That's the term they like to use, assault weapon. There's really no term or definition for assault weapon, really. It's just anything that they think looks scary, or anything that they just don't really understand. The thing is with that is, if you have these features, is what they call them, assault weapon features, you have to either lock your magazine in place or go with a featureless configuration, which then you have to lock your stock in place and not have a pistol grip and then not have a flash hider. So you have to really jump through a lot of hoops as a gun owner in California if you want to have an AR-15 or an AK or anything along those lines. And they think this is magically going to save lives. It doesn't. I mean, we even saw in a shooting at the Polway Synagogue, the person's firearm was California compliant, ironically enough. So if anybody thinks that any of these assault weapons regulations on firearms are going to do anything to save lives, it doesn't.
Well, Sam, how many legislatures do you believe think that the AR and the AR-15 is for assault rifle?
Every Democrat and unfortunately maybe one or two Republicans, but the Democrats are absolutely in lockstep, hating the Second Amendment. As a matter of fact, the former chairman of the Assembly Public Safety Committee, when I asked him a question, I said this bill is unconstitutional, and he told me from the dais, we're special. We're California. We don't pay so much attention to the Constitution. We do what California does. So their mentality is they don't give a rip about the Constitution, the Second Amendment, in many cases even the First Amendment, and certainly the 14th Amendment against law-abiding citizens. They want to use those as weapons. A perversion of those amendments as weapons against the law-abiding because they want control. It isn't really about gun control, except for the fact that they know they cannot control us, the people, as long as we are armed. And that was the first purpose that our founding fathers wanted to have an armed populace to defend against tyranny of all kinds. Tyranny at home, tyranny in your community and tyranny against a government that might go wacky, and some might characterize the government in California as wacky, to be able to defend themselves against unconstitutional laws. So it doesn't make sense. People say, how can they think these things if the Supreme Court has said that firearms that are in common use for lawful purposes are, by definition, protected by the Second Amendment? And as a matter of fact, they didn't say firearms. They said anything, any type of weapon, knives, clubs, anything that is in common use, tasers and stun guns for lawful purposes, is protected by the Second Amendment. It extends to accessories. Anything related to guns and personal protection is protected. But they don't believe that. They don't want to believe it, and that's why they are arming the California Attorney General to fight against all of these, the truth.
Yeah,
I'd like to add on to that too, because when you talk about the history of just the Revolution and just Lexington and Concord, I mean, the spark that lit the Revolution was the British coming to take a stockpile of arms from the colonists. I mean, you're talking about these outright confiscations that used to happen back in those days. And I think these people wisen up to the fact that they don't need to do an outright confiscation anymore nowadays if they can just ever so slightly infringe in little bits and pieces, take little pieces and bits away of your liberty, and people willingly give it up because they either don't have the agency in order to actually look into what's actually happening, because a lot of people nowadays just believe everything the screen people tell them, or it's so minuscule that they think there's no real impact on that until all of a sudden, now something like 1127 Glocks could be banned in a year's time in California. It creeps up so slowly. So when you have a situation like this where people will just get rid of their liberty without even realizing it, they don't need to go door to door. They don't need to go in the middle of the night. There are warrantless searches for people with firearms. It's really duplicitous. It's really conniving to the American people. And to even add on to the in common use test from the Supreme Court, the precedents set by Heller and then reaffirmed by Bruin, there was another case, the Caetano case out of Massachusetts, where it sort of set a threshold, in a sense, of what common use really is. About 200,000 stun guns. So the case dealt with stun guns, and if they're protected under the Second Amendment, which, of course, it's a bearable arm, they are. So the Supreme Court said, okay, 200,000, that's plenty, that's common use. So if 200,000 stun guns, if that's enough, millions of Glocks, millions of Smith & Wesson M&Ps, things like Glock-styled firearms, those are 100% in common use. So when you have these bills that they think they can do whatever they want, they feel so empowered to because of this supermajority they've had, we need to really fight back against something like this, because even with the handgun roster in California, it's a government-approved list of handguns that can be sold in the state of California. Just that flat out by itself, without even getting into the intricacies of that, is already just a big red flag. Yeah. Because now it's the government telling you, we believe these guns are safer for you, even though technologically speaking, some newer models of Smith & Wesson M&P shields like the EZ or the Generation 3 and 4 Glocks, those are much safer technically and by comparison. You know, if they're so worried about these machine gun conversion Glocks, then they should allow the Gen 4 and 5 Glocks on the roster and get rid of the roster altogether, because there's components in those that you can't convert those into machine guns. But the Generation 3s are grandfathered into the roster because of the time frame of that. Right. So it's hypocritical. They
well, they're consistent in their hypocrisy. Well, you know, Sam, you know, one of the things that now, I mean, I know a lot of my friends, even family members who, you know, they're the AR-15 fans. You know, when I bring up the Mini 14 that I have that I really like, you know, it's like, sorry, people, you can keep your AR-15. I like my little Ruger Mini 14 and the ranch rifle. I mean, I'm beginning to hear that even that is coming up on the chopping block.
Well, it's because they don't know their rear end from a hot rock with regard to firearms, and they missed the Mini 14. They didn't see the Mini 14 with the collapsible stock and the pistol grip and the flash hider in that configuration. And what they, in essence, what they want to do is they want to ban, as Jason said, all of these configurations and parts and accessories that make the firearms easier and more to use and more accurate for the law-abiding citizens to be able to use to defend themselves. But they're using that. We can't do that because it's easier for the criminals to use them. They can't have their cake and eat it too. They want us to have the oldest models, least safe models, the most obsolete technologies, and in configurations that are the least accurate.
A J.C. Higgins bolt action 22.
Well, what's funny? I'm listening to you guys, and I'm not a real, I don't know all the lingo that you guys do, and some of it sounds Chinese, but I am a woman, and I do know Assemblyman Rick Zabar had wanted to pass AB 1333, which would have made it illegal for people to protect themselves. And then and then we have Karen Bass, and right now we're short on with police and first responders to emergencies. And as a woman, more and more women are single and they're living by themselves. And so I just see that being able to protect yourself is vital. I mean, I don't know all the intricacies about a gun and stuff, but I know that I do have a gun. I can use my gun if I have to use my gun. And I just think that the fact that you see these people trying to take our Second Amendment away to protect ourselves, there's just something very wrong with what they're trying to do. So, I mean, I'm just looking at it from a perspective of a woman and these bills that they keep trying to pass.
They want you dependable on them.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's any little bit that they can take from you to get rid of your sense of self-determination, because really what it boils down to with the Second Amendment is, it's a deterrent against tyranny. It's to protect your communities and your country by extension, but it's also that God-given right to self-preservation.
Yes.
It's that ability for you to say,
there you go with those inalienable rights again.
Hey, you know what? Those are important.
Well, you are
picky.
You hear this. You are your own first responder. You hear it over and over. And with the fact that the police force, they're short right now. They've been short since the defund the police movement. And so women, you are your first responder. You have to go get a gun. You have to learn how to protect yourself. Sometimes I hear people say they call 911 and it's busy.
You should call and get Eric Garcetti in Spanish.
If I may understand that you are not unique in that since COVID, more than half of the people that have purchased firearms for protection are women. Women.
Wow.
They make up the majority of gun buyers since COVID.
Wow.
And you know what? We're not having accidental shootings. We're not having accidental discharges or negligent discharges at home. Women are doing what they need to do to find out how to use firearms to protect themselves, their homes, their family, their loved ones, their places of business, and they're doing it very well. So you are not alone. That is the general feeling, and that's why I think that the Second Amendment cuts across all of the political lines. Because
absolutely.
There are Democrats and Republicans who want to protect their families.
Sam, what we did with our Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club is twice we put on beginners firearm safety courses. We did one at Angela Shooting Range and the other one at Oak Tree. And, it was mainly made up of first-time people who have ever held a gun. And, and what was apparent or what they realized after, 2 hours of, classroom training and then 2 hours on the line is that, they became familiar, they became knowledgeable, they didn't have the fear as they were doing, and because it instilled that confidence with them. So, we'll be doing that again. But, I'm looking at the clock, and it's already, there's the first half hour just about up. But, Sam, in L.A. County for the longest time, people, it was impossible to get a concealed carry permit. Then we had with the last sheriff that started to increase. And right now, the Sheriff's Department has about a 6,000 application waiting list. They're kind of slow walking it. And in 2026, we're going to have an election for a new LA County sheriff. And I understand that you had the opportunity to interview my friend Oscar Martinez.
And understand that the California Rifle and Pistol Association and Gun Owners of California have filed a lawsuit against the sheriff of LA County exactly because of what you're talking about. It takes up to 2 years to get a concealed carry weapons permit. And on top of that, Attorney General Pam Bondi, the United States Attorney General, has directed her Civil Rights Division to investigate first the sheriffs in Los Angeles, but any agency that has a pattern and practice of denying people their Second Amendment rights because they make the processes too long, too cumbersome, too unnecessary, and too expensive. So we are fighting back. People can get engaged. We defeated the Zabur bill largely on huge public response. And it was actually our founder and chairman, Senator H.L. Richardson, who served in the state legislature, that gave us the first Castle Doctrine. It wasn't called Castle Doctrine back then.
Perfect.
But the first law that allowed us to defend ourselves in our homes that did not require us to retreat. So we have to continue to fight for that.
Now, Sam, do you have a website where people can get more information, to join your organization and support it financially?
Sure. www.gunownersca.com, GUNOWNERSCA.com. You can find out about elections, legislation, and all of the lawsuits that we are involved in, and it's a bunch of them. It's over 60 lawsuits we're involved in.
All right. Thank you, Sam, and we'll talk again soon.
At your convenience.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the first half hour. Now we have a caller. Just hang on, caller. We'll be right after the break. We'll be back with Josh for a few minutes, and we have my good friend Paul, who's going to come in and talk about the impact of some of the Bassetti's budget cuts coming up. So we'll be right back. Don't go away. And we're back, Jason, before we go any further, how do people find out more about your organization?
Absolutely. So for my local chapter that I'm the legislative chair for the San Fernando Valley, you can go to CRPASFV.com. On the website, we have a legislative review that will keep you up to date on what's happening on some of the 2A legislation in California, as well as a nifty little resource to help you find your legislator so you guys out there can send them letters, call them, and pressure them to do their duty and uphold the Constitution instead of trying to attack it.
No, absolutely. And so, thank you for all the work that you do.